Hi and welcome back to India on 99.94, your home of Indian cricket content. I'm Nikesh Ragani, your host, BBC commentator, and Sarah Waris of Wisden, my co-host alongside me as always. And today we're going to be discussing Rishabh Pant, a bit of a Rishabh Pant special, really. Not necessarily like we've done specials in the past where we've sort of celebrated the likes of Julan Goswami and even Virat Kohli on occasion as well. It's more of a sort of in-depth look at his stats across formats, what he brings to the Indian side in each of those formats, and it is basically off the comments that he made to Harsha Bhogle in that interview when it was raining in that final ODI in New Zealand, and he talked about his stats, and Harsha was basically almost complimenting him, really, I felt, with that sort of comparison with Virender Sehwag and the fact that they're very successful at Test cricket despite their attacking nature. We spoke about that on the podcast in the previous episode as well. And Sarah, those comments have divided opinion, haven't they, with Rishabh Pant saying that he doesn't care about those stats at the moment. It's time to judge him when he's 30 or 32 and then sort of compare those stats across formats. It's divided opinion, hasn't it?
Yeah. So his exact comments were Harsha Bhogle was asking him that his white ball record is not as good as his test record, and Pant just cut him in and said that his white ball record is not that bad either. So there are two sides to it. I'd say that on one hand, for someone like someone who's 22, 20, he's not 22, 24, 25, he recently turned 25, to have that kind of a comment and to just cut off someone who is so experienced and say his record is not that bad either somehow reeks of a little bit of arrogance when his ODI stats are great, but his T20I stats are not the greatest. So you can, instead of saying my white ball record is not the worst either, you can easily say or you can just finish off, allow him to finish what he's saying, and then say that yeah, I have improvements to do in this format. Because right now what it seemed was, I am above criticism, my white ball record is not that bad either, so don't compare it now, compare it later. That part of his line was true, that he's too young to be compared to someone like a Virender Sehwag. But just the part where he said that my white ball record is not the is not bad either, it's not the greatest either. So just cut off on that arrogance. I don't know, it seemed a little arrogant to me. I don't know how you felt about his comments though.
I mean, they did come across a little bit arrogant. I suppose you've got to take various things into account when comments like this are made. Obviously, English is his second language. He was giving the interview in English, so sometimes the phrases that you use might not be the same as you'd use if you were speaking Hindi or another language that you're more familiar with. So you've got to always take those comments with a pinch of salt sometimes for cricketers who English isn't their first language, and players from India, it's, although some of them speak it brilliantly, it's still not their first language. And even Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli sometimes say things and you think, did he really just say that? Or, that came across a bit strong. But if you did the literal translation into, Marathi or Hindi or whatever it might be, it might come across a little bit different and people might be more accepting of those comments that they made. And Rishabh Pant, look, he speaks decent English, he speaks good English, but he's not as fluent as some of those other guys that I've just mentioned as well. So you've got to take that into account. I think the fact that he mentioned 30-32, he's sort of almost assuming that he's going to be in the Indian white ball sides all the way through until he's 32 years old, which is a little bit arrogant as well. Because, even if you're the great Sachin Tendulkar, age 16 or 18 or, even when he was sort of in his early 20s, similar age to Rishabh Pant, and he was making waves, and obviously his records were a lot better than Rishabh's at that stage. But even then, somebody like him was very humble when he did those interviews and talked about the future and just talked about looking ahead to the next series and respecting opponents. And all right, sometimes people just want real talk, don't they? And maybe that's what Rishabh is giving, but Harsha was giving real talk as well, because as you mentioned, those stats, and you said ODI stats are good. I don't think they're very good. Let's delve into his ODI stats to start with. So he's played just the 30 matches, so it's fairly early on in his career, but he's had a decent run as well to
Yeah.
be able to judge him. I'd say 30 matches, 26 innings, so he's not batted in all of those 30 matches. The 100, which we saw against England, that 125 not out, brilliant. That was awesome. Match-winning innings. That average of 34.6. That's
Yeah.
pretty in this day and age. That's pretty average. This is not 1996, where that would be considered a good average, a healthy average. His strike rate is good, 106.65. You'd expect nothing less from somebody like Rishabh Pant. But the average, the fact. Let's break it down as well, Sarah, because I've got the country by country comparison here as well. And so he's played those 30 matches. 12 of them have come against the West Indies, so the vast majority against one opponent. And out of those 12, he's batted 10 times, 263 runs at an average of 26.3. So that's not very good. Not the best opposition as well to have played
Yeah.
those 12 matches against. And the only countries the average is anywhere close to decent and more than decent against England, 78 is average out of 5 innings, but that was helped by 125 not out. Overall, he scored just the 312 runs. So that was hugely boosted by that 125 not out. And then Bangladesh, who he's only played 1 innings against and scored 48. Everybody else, South Africa, 3 matches, average of 33. Not bad, not great. Australia, 26. New Zealand, his record is terrible against them. Sri Lanka, just the 1 innings where he was out for 4. So he's not really taken the world by storm, has he? At all.
Yeah, I agree with that. But on the other hand, this is right from his debut, and on the other hand, I'd like to talk about his stats since 2021, where he's not done that badly either. So 491 runs, which is the fourth highest for amongst all Indians. 12. He's batted in 12 innings, average of 45, strike rate of 110. His strike rate is the best among Indian players with a at least 225 runs in this period. So yeah, maybe he didn't start off that well, and now last year, since COVID break, at least he's been doing decently. And I would still say that he is better suited to ODIs than he is to T20Is at this point in his career, because he's the kind of player who needs some time to get in and go after the ball. Then he goes after the bowling. So ODIs is better suited for him in that regard. And even in his last 10 innings, if you see his last 10 innings, I'm just going to read out his last 10 innings: 77, 78, 16, 85, 0, 11, 18, 56, 125, unbeaten 125, and 15. So they're not bad stats either. So I know why people keep on talking about his ODI stats not being great. And overall, if you look at it, it's not like the greatest. But off late, I can see an improvement in his ODI performances, and that is the whole reason why I'm like, at least he should be given a longer run in this format, because I still feel that at number 4 or 5, he can be a good ODI batter for India. 4, I think Shreyas Iyer is locked in, but at 5, I think it'll be a toss up between not Sky, KL Rahul and Rishabh Pant. KL Rahul is likely to edge ahead, and a lot of people compare Sanju Samson versus Rishabh Pant, but currently I would still say that it's between Sanju Samson and Surya Kumar Yadav, not based on ability alone, but because of what the team management is thinking. So like, that's my 2 pence on it. And I know what's more important is that he's not been able to do well in T20Is. And that is like, I just want to ask you, why is that the case? Why people like Sehwag, Harsha Bhogle was talking in his interview, he was comparing that. Why are people like Sehwag and Rishabh Pant, if you can think of any other examples, these players are seems like they will take to white ball cricket more easily than they do, but they rule test cricket. Why is that the case?
Well, I mean, firstly, on Virender Sehwag, he sort of revolutionised the way that Test cricket was played because of his style and because of that attacking nature. And obviously, look, in Test cricket, you're going to get more gaps because there's going to be a slip cordon, there's going to be all those catches behind the bat, there might be a short leg, so you're going to have all those gaps to be able to score. And somebody like him opening the batting as well, and blessed with such brilliant hand-eye coordination as well. Very little foot movement from somebody like a Sehwag, but just had that brilliant hand-eye coordination and the power as well that he packed in those shots. For him, I certainly think that suited him a lot better. I'd say they're not similar in that way though, because Rishabh Pant, the reason he's done well in Test cricket is because obviously he's been given a license to be able to go and just play his game, but he's also able to take his time as well. And it might seem a strange thing to say because you look at his overall strike rates in the 70s, and when he has scored those, big scores, it tends to be a lot more than that even. And he catches up a lot by the end of his innings, and some of the shots he plays are berserk. That reverse scoop against Jimmy Anderson with the second new ball in that Test series in 2021. I mean, just audacious shots that he plays, but he is able to take that time. Whereas I think with Rishabh Pant, he feels the pressure, the hype, everything that goes with the name of Rishabh Pant now because of his performances in Test cricket. They should automatically be a world beater in T20 cricket. And he tries to play literally a shot a ball, and not just any old shot, just too expansive every single ball. And he feels that if he doesn't score a boundary every two balls, that he's not doing his job. And somebody needs to sit him down maybe and say, that's not necessarily your job. You can take your time if the conditions are like that, or we're in a difficult situation and we've lost wickets. Just, you can take your time a little bit, and we back you to catch up at the end because that's how good he is. So I think it's just a mindset thing with him. Somebody like a Sehwag, obviously, there were weaknesses, and they were sort of worked on in white ball cricket by teams around the world. And you can set more fields for those types of deliveries, those short deliveries and into the body and cramping for room and all that kind of stuff. You can work on that more in ODI cricket, as it was in Sehwag's day mainly, and a little bit T20 internationals as well. Whereas in Test cricket, you've got your traditional slip cordon. You look to nick the batters off, don't you, early on with that swing and bring the cordon into play and all that kind of stuff. So he just used to take full advantage of that and smash the ball to all parts through the vacant big cover region, which, they usually just one fielder in that region maybe, and picking those gaps, anything on the legs, anything too straight, he'll whip it through mid-wicket. And there's always big gaps there. So I think that's the reason why somebody like a Sehwag did so well in Tests as opposed to white ball cricket. Not that he was a bad white ball player, but a modest record, similar to something like a Rishabh Pant now across white ball cricket. So with Rishabh, it's more a mindset thing than anything else. And you mentioned T20 cricket, and I think that's an important thing. I think you're correct in terms of ODIs. He's improving of late, and we have seen that improvement. So it's good to stick with him, and it is a format that suits him a bit better with the amount of time that he gets to build his innings early on, then catch up. But T20s are interesting, and we'll discuss that in more detail after this short break.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
So, Sarah, T20 internationals then, Rishabh Pant, he's had a fair crack of the whip, hasn't he? 66 matches, 56 innings, and he's not even got 1,000 runs yet. 987 runs, average of 22, strike rate 126. Not figures you expect to see from Rishabh Pant.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the last time he scored at a decent strike rate, scored runs and at a decent strike rate. It was 52, unbeaten 52 against West Indies at Eden Gardens, where he made those runs at a strike rate of 185. He's played a decent amount of games after that, struck in the below 100 many times, struck below 120 many times. And I think possibly it's also, his positions. If you just look at his positions, he's batted at number 5 a number of times, number 6. He has played at 4 also. But then in that interview also, Harsha Bhogle asked him what is his best position, and he said that in T20s he'd like to bat up the order. Now, I think it's up to the team management to and later on he did go on to say that it's imperative that the coach and the captain, they decide which place and which position suits a player, and then make the team accordingly. So indirectly, it could be a hint that see, this is my best position, this is where I want to play, and you make the team accordingly, or something like that. It could be a message to the management, you never know. And even in the World Cup, like T20 World Cup, it was bizarre that people were, being like it's either DK versus Rishabh Pant. It was never Dinesh Karthik versus Rishabh Pant in the team. It was, maybe you can say, KL Rahul versus Rishabh Pant in the team, because uh, and that's where the management needs to have a clear talk with Rishabh Pant going forward, that this is where we think for 2024 this is your best position, and give him a longer rope at that place, like maybe opening 3. I think if Virat Kohli continues, Kohli will be at 3. But opening is the best spot for him, and he is a left-hander, so you can have someone like Prithvi Shaw, left hand right hand combination, and it solves so many of India's problems. And that's the main issue which the selectors, tackling Rishabh Pant in T20s. I don't think they've tackled him well enough in the format, so we are looking at all his stats, and it's not the greatest. But on one hand, it's not really his fault, because he's consistently, being playing at a position which he's not familiar with, in contrasted to the IPL, where he's batted at 3 or 4, and his numbers are a lot better. So yeah, with Rishabh Pant in T20s, I think it's both ways. Like, he is to play him, but then there are a lot of other things to it as well.
And he actually mentioned that with Harsha Bhogle, didn't he,
Yeah.
in that interview where he was asked about his preferred batting positions, and he basically said he likes to open in T20 internationals, or just T20 cricket generally. In ODIs, he said 4 or 5, and then he said, I'm already number 5 in Test cricket. I don't think he's not consistently number 5 in Test cricket. So the way that came across as well, I mean, he wouldn't be a bad shout even at number 7, to be honest, if the balance of the side was such that he had to come in a bit lower. So I think probably 6 is ideal for him in Test cricket. I don't know what you think. In T20s, yeah, if he plays, he opens, but he doesn't have to play, does he?
Yeah.
The selectors, I mean, we haven't got any selectors at the moment, or we don't think we have anyway. There's some ghosts selecting teams for Bangladesh and all that kind of stuff. But when the new selection committee comes in, do you think anybody's got the balls to drop him? Is it just one of those situations that he's a star now and we've got to have him in there?
Yeah, especially, saying that you compare my stats at 32, 33 already. Somehow he's like, as you said, I'm going to play for the next 7 years. So, uh, yeah, you're right. I don't know if the players, or they can easily just rest him, rest him for series after series, as which is the common term which the selectors use. So, yeah, it's. You're you are right about that. If he plays, he has to open, and if he is a certainty in the team, there is someone like a Sanju Samson, who in ODIs, yeah, he might or might not fit in, but in T20s he really has to fit in. So if someone after 60 matches, which is not a like short duration, he's played a lot, and 60 matches not done that well, so why isn't Sanju there? Like, I think, yeah, Rishabh Pant is not playing because of his test records. He is playing because of his test records. Surya Kumar is playing because of his he is playing ODIs because of his T20 records, and it's just a case of, Indian selectors and the BCCI just messing up their formats, because it's bizarre that one player does well in one format and he's automatically expected to do well in the other format. So, yeah, the strong point that he's not a certainty in the T20 11, and we should stop expecting him to be picked, if he's not picked, it should be okay, because there are a lot of other talented players. There are likes of Tewatia also and all these other players coming up. So where do they all fit? And I think Rian Parag soon he should be in the team, because so much he offers, and he's had a very good Said Mushtaq Ali trophy, very good Vijay Hazare trophy. So there are all these upcoming youngsters doing well in different formats. So Pant, if he's not doing well, then just be honest and yeah, just let him
Yeah.
go.
Ruturaj Gaikwad, there's so many. I mean, just on the Sanju Samson versus Rishabh Pant, so the stats in ODI cricket in 2022, they've both played similar amount of matches. Sanju's played 9 innings, this is 9 innings. Rishabh Pant, 10 innings. Sanju's got 284 runs at an average of 71 and a strike rate of 105. And Rishabh Pant, 336 runs, average of 37.3, strike rate 96.5. So I would say similar stats. You look at the average there and you think, wow, Sanju Samson averages 71. But in terms of the runs they've scored, I mean, he's got 250s, Sanju. Rishabh's got 250s and 100 from just one more innings. Boundary count, Sanju's got 24s, Rishabh's got 42. Although Sanju Samson has got 14 sixes to Rishabh's 5. I'd say on the face of it, very similar stats. It's just that Sanju's had a couple of extra not outs, right?
Yeah.
And that average has been boosted. And it's not just to sneer at the not outs, because those not outs have won games for India as well. So he's been in those positions and he's made sure he's got India over the line to either win those matches or, be at the end to set that target. So it's not to sneer at that, but they're very similar stats as well. So a lot is made of, wow, he averages 71, he averages 37. But you look at the runs, the boundaries, the strike rate, all very similar in terms of all that. So I think there's, a little bit more behind those stats that needs to be delved into before people just look on the face of it and think, wow, Sanju Samson has to be playing ahead of Rishabh Pant in ODIs. Maybe the argument is there, as you say, for T20s, but as far as ODIs go, Rishabh is improving. The stats are very similar if you delve into them as well. Right, so Rishabh Pant, the person then, again, he's been getting a lot of stick on social media for his appearance, the fact people think he's overweight, his attitude, of course, we've talked about as well. We'll take another short break, and then off the back of that, we'll discuss Rishabh Pant, the person, and his personality.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
So, Sarah, Rishabh Pant, I mean, look, he's not had an easy journey in cricket. I mean, he's from Haridwar, and he went to train in Delhi. So, had to take overnight buses with his mum quite often. They slept on the floor in a gurdwara because they had no other accommodation. They couldn't afford anywhere to stay. They ate langar because they couldn't afford really to eat out and stuff. And, he had a tough journey, but this is him as sort of, before he was even a teenager, 11, 12, 13 years old, trying to make it as a cricketer, got the support from his family. His dad was, obviously not there with him at the time, so that would have been difficult. And his mum was with him for quite a lot of those times in Delhi when he was initially going there for the training. Then later he would have to make that journey on his own as well and sleep in the Gurdwara. And I know a lot of Indian cricketers have been through similar things. We talk about Yashasvi Jaiswal and a lot of publicity around him sleeping in a tent in Shivaji Park basically for years away from his family as well. So we know a lot of them have been through it, but he's no different. It's not as if he's been fed a silver spoon from birth and he's just got everything handed to him on a plate. He's had to work damn hard to get to where he is.
Yeah.
And maybe that arrogance that some people see is just him having that fight, and that he's defending himself because he's had to fight every step of the way to get to where he is, and even to play domestic age group cricket and all that kind of stuff. He's had to put in a lot of sacrifice, and often people who've been on journeys like that get defensive. They get it means a lot to them. They don't want to lose what they've got. They get defensive, and it might come across as arrogant. Do you think there's a fair argument to say that he might not be arrogant in some of those comments? He's just defending himself.
Yeah, that's true. One more thing which needs to be spoken about if you're talking about his journey is that his father unfortunately passed away during the IPL in 2017 when he was just a teenager. He went back, cremated his father, came back 2 days later, played a match when he was just a teenager, when everyone was like, you can easily skip the IPL, there's nothing wrong with it. And he came back and he scored a fighting 50. I think it was against RCB. He was the high scorer for his team, and I think his team went on to lose by 1 run in the end or something like that. And before that, that was a match where I was like, okay, wow, Rishabh Pant, his temperament, and it's so that incident is so similar to what Kohli also had to go through in 2008. So yeah, it's especially with the IPL, still Virat, I'm not comparing, it's wrong to compare, but with Rishabh Pant, it's like, you are playing against the top level players. No, a few years later, people will forget all the external factors that happened and judge you just based on your stats. So to come back there and play world class bowlers is laudable for someone who was just a teenager back then, and that's his whole temperament, as you rightly said. That if you want to talk about an incident which showed what Rishabh Pant the cricketer is, I think that's the incident you talk about. And yeah, it's in last podcast we spoke about that. We are very quick to criticize all these players. It could just be that he is just defending himself, as you said, that he has not been given a consistent rope in T20s. Also, you can say we spoke about how he prefers batting up the order. He's been batting at 5, 6, sometimes even lower. So yeah, it's very right to say it's very wrong to say that this is just blatant, this was arrogance or something, and maybe I shouldn't have said that. But I think it works two ways. That on one hand, it did come across as that, but on the other hand, there are just so many layers to it. So it's just a very complex, just analyzing someone's comments based on uh, just face value seems a little, yeah, there are so many layers to it. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And those sort of coming back after the passing of his father, you mentioned Kohli there. Obviously, Sachin did it in the 1999 World Cup as well, where he flew all the way back from England to Mumbai to cremate his father, and then flew back and scored 140 against Kenya. I remember that so well. And he missed the Zimbabwe match as a result. India lost that. So, everyone's hopes were pinned on Sachin to come back and do something, and he delivered. So, you've not just got to be a great player to do that, but you've got to be so mentally strong to be able to come back from the death of a family member, particularly a parent,
Yeah.
and just literally come back and play and do your job and do it really well. I mean, the mental strength that he must have to just to be able to take to the field, let alone score a 50. I mean, even if he got out for a golden duck, nobody would have cared at that time and blamed him. But the fact that he went out there and he still concentrated and did his job well, just so mentally strong. So has to be lauded for that as well. I'd say another thing that happens a lot in South Asia, and not just India, but across South Asia, across the world really, but particularly from what I see in South Asia from sports fans is, and not just sports fans, even people who are fans of the movie industry, Bollywood and all that. There's a lot of body shaming that goes on,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is from people who probably got a beer belly themselves, hiding
Yeah.
behind a screen, have got a profile picture on their social media of a dog or something, and or just something random, or maybe Virat Kohli is their profile picture or whatever.
Yeah.
They've got no right to talk about anyone else's appearance when, and I've got no right to talk about their appearance either. But if they want to put it out there, these are people who are not exactly chiseled Greek gods, are they? Making these comments. These are just your average Joe off the street commenting on Rishabh Pant being overweight or whatever it is. And Prithvi Shaw has copped a lot in the past as well. And, a lot of cricketers over the years, a lot of Bollywood stars have copped this kind of criticism. Aishwarya Rai has had a lot over the years as well, if you're talking about movies. And
Days after she delivered a kid,
a
everyone was
baby.
like, everyone was
Exactly. It's like,
when
mate,
will you lose weight? Yeah.
welcome to the real world. You know what I mean? This is what people have to go through. And there's nothing wrong with it. You should be proud, whatever your body shape. Nobody should have a right to judge. And, Rishabh Pant, he's not in Virat Kohli shape. He's not in Ravi Jadeja shape. He's not that kind of cricketer. He's not a Faf du Plessis. He's, these guys are on a different level when it comes to that kind of fitness. And a lot of it, I would say, it's worked for Kohli. That's the regime that's worked for him. It's worked for du Plessis. It's worked for Jadeja. It's worked for so many cricketers around the world where they look in shape. They've got a good muscle definition, they're slim, they're toned, all that kind of stuff. And it seems to work and bring out the best in them in terms of their cricket. Whereas you look at, a Sachin Tendulkar, for example, or, an Aravinda de Silva, if you're
Lakshman, you can
talking
say.
Sri Lankans, Lakshman, I mean, he couldn't even stand up straight for the second half of his career, but managed to, just be such a brilliant player for India. Sehwag, I love Sehwag. Even Rohit Sharma, right? You look at all these guys, and I love players like that because they make me believe that, you don't need to
Yeah.
look like Virat Kohli to be able to play international cricket. And there is such a thing. I've spoken about it so many times about cricket fitness. And who's to say that Rishabh Pant isn't fit enough to? I mean, he's shown he's fit enough to be out there and score unbeaten centuries and under huge pressure in hot conditions in Australia. He's done it in India. He's done it in England when it was very hot in the most recent summer where he hit that 125 not out at Old Trafford. It was in the middle of a heat wave. It was like nearly 40 degrees, and he was doing that. So he can bat in these really difficult conditions for long periods of time, run between the wickets, hit those big shots. He's got the energy to do that. He can keep wickets as well. That takes a different type of fitness. So who are people to judge somebody like a Rishabh Pant just because of the way they think he looks, and they don't think he looks fit enough to be an international cricketer? And there were pictures of people saying that, do you remember Dwayne Leberock in the 2007 World Cup, the Bermuda guy who took that diving catch?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he didn't look like an international cricketer, and he was a part-time cricketer. And everybody has fun with that video and the memes about him. And there were people posting pictures of Dwayne Leberock underneath that interview with Harsha Bhogle that Rishabh gave, and saying this is Rishabh Pant when he's 30, 32, like he talks about. I mean, it's just so disrespectful to suggest things like that. There's such a thing as cricket fitness, and for me, he's more than fit enough to play international cricket. He keeps wickets for long periods of time. He bats for long periods of time. He's proven that, at least.
Yeah, and just one very while you were talking about that, all very fair points. I just thought of this similarity. Two people in the current Indian team who are criticized for their weight: Rohit Sharma and Rishabh Pant. Rohit Sharma is still called Vada Pav and all that. Uh, it's very coincidental, if you can say that, how their journeys have gone. Obviously, Rohit Sharma is at a very later stage in his career, but their start, there was a lot of criticism about Rohit Sharma's start when he was starting off. For first 4, 5, 6 years, he was called the Maggie Man. Like, just 2 minutes. There were a lot of memes. Obviously, back then there was no Twitter and all, but there were these SMS forwards and whatever, back in the day, where you were like, all these jokes that, okay, someone calls some, like, the dressing room, people want to talk to Rohit Sharma, and there were these memes that, oh yeah, he'll be back in 2 minutes because he's the Maggie Man, he'll be dismissed, and all those jokes were doing the rounds back then also. And there was criticism about how he is being continued with in the team. I think there was Manoj Tiwari who scored 100 against West Indies. And then the next series, which was a CB series against Australia, Manoj Tiwari was dropped, and Rohit Sharma, who was injured for the West Indies tour, he came back, and then he had a pretty decent CB series. So that, but there were all these, talks about how the management is favoring Rohit Sharma for no reason, and it's unfair to the other players. I think something very similar is happening to Rishabh Pant also. But we can't deny, at the other hand, whatever we've dissected Pant, that Pant is a once in a generational cricketer. Like, just to be able to, he has 500s in test cricket, 590s in test cricket, which he could have well had 10 hundreds in test cricket so early on in his career, which is just bizarre. And he's done it against the best bowlers, and across conditions, different conditions. The Border Gavaskar trophy, it's like iconic for someone like me who didn't see the 2001 series. So it's very, I think somehow the management, all that we've spoken about, somehow the management knows that, okay, Rohit Sharma, he- if we back him for 5 years, he will give us the desired results in the next 10 years or so. And maybe the same is happening with Rishabh Pant also. We never know. Whatever we've dissected is based on current form, and going forward, there is no doubt about his skills. Like, we are not doing this podcast because we're ignorant of whatever Rishabh Pant has to offer. We're just talking about current skills. And just, it's very coincidental how it's Rishabh Pant and Rohit Sharma, both are fat shamed and have almost had a very similar start to their international careers.
One thing I will say as well is that the great thing about both of those guys, and Virender Sehwag, and all these guys we've spoken about, Neetu David even from the Indian women's team was fat shamed for so long, and even, I mean, there is like got racial at some points with her skin color and all that kind of stuff, which is horrible. They don't give a shit,
Yeah.
which I think is brilliant. I mean, look at Sehwag now. Sehwag, he doesn't, he's not gone in for all that sort of hair replacement treatment. He's happy with his bald patch. He's happy with his tummy sticking out a little bit. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be, right? You should be happy with who you are. If you don't like that, then get down the gym and get a personal trainer and do all that, eat right. And if that's what you want to look like, then fine. But if you don't care, and as long as Rohit Sharma and Rishabh Pant are both fit enough to play international cricket, and Rohit's not got long left, he's getting on a little bit in age, just do what you're doing, man. If he does enjoy Varapal, let him enjoy Varapal.
Yeah.
Let him do that. If I could score as many runs internationally as he has done, and I could eat varapals and pav bhajis and all this, fried food, I'd love it. I would absolutely love it, wouldn't you? If you could just eat whatever you wanted,
Yeah.
go out there, score hundreds, calm, just eat a big McDonald's, whatever it is, right? Whatever floats your boat. I would love that. So if they can do it, let them do it, I say.
Yeah. Agree 100%. On the
That's
other
it.
hand, yeah, agree. On the other hand, Virat Kohli, there, he eats butter chicken, and he's like, I have to double, because I have to double the amount of I have to do double the amount of exercise which I do if I just eat, a little bit of butter chicken or whatever it is that he eats. So yeah, it
Well, he
works for
doesn't eat
him.
chicken anymore, does he?
Yeah,
He's given
pav
up all
bhaji
that.
or chola bhatura or whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
he basically is, that there's that story of, I think it was the 100 in Adelaide in 1415 or something like that, when he just started really getting into the fitness and stuff. Well, it was either that or was it the 100 at Edgbaston in 18? I can't remember. One or the other. He tells a story about he got back to the hotel after that, knew he'd played a brilliant innings, and he must have been 14, 15 because he still ate chicken back then. And he ordered a chicken burger to the room on room service, and he took the bun off the top, and he was about to take the bun off the bottom as well, and he thought, nah, you know what, I'll have one half of the bun today. And that's like, these people who are a bit extreme, like, oh yeah, go on then, I'll have a little bit of milk with my tea, I'll treat myself. It's just like, it's a bit extreme, but it works for him, right?
Yeah.
Whatever works for you, just do that. And it's working for Rishabh Pant, I think, in terms of fitness, and I don't think that's an issue. I just think in T20 cricket, like we've sort of suggested, he either has to open or you look for other options, because he's not your finisher, and he's had a good run in the middle order and it's just not worked out really. So, but yeah, we do hope to see him till he's at least 32, if not 36, and having success for India across formats, be it ODIs, tests, whatever it might be. So, Rishabh, we love you, and we just hope you're successful as your talent suggests you will be. I think that about sums it up, right?
Yep. And continue the stump mic chatter behind, because
we love
that
it.
makes Test cricket even more enjoyable. Yeah.
Love it, with all those different sound effects that he comes out with as well.
Yeah.
Right. That's all we've got time for on this Rishabh Pant special. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us, and see you again next time.